I know. He said with this.
Good evening. I'll call this meeting to order for Monday, August 13th, the Bennington Select Board. First item on the agenda is, Chris, would you lead us in the pledge, please, tonight?
Sure.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next item are the minutes from July 23rd. Are there any comments or corrections? I was not here, so I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move they be accepted.
Second?
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to accept the minutes from July 23rd. Is there any further discussion?
Sharon, I'm going to abstain also.
Okay. All right, all those in favor? And we have one abstention. Next item on the agenda are the warrants. And I'm assuming that first warrant is the last warrant for last year. Warrant number 3?
No,
No,
warrant
it
number
isn't.
3 would be the third warrant of this year.
Okay. It's a little one, that's why it threw me.
Well,
Not used to seeing those little tiny
we
amounts.
do what we can, Sharon.
I know. Any questions on warrant number 3 from anyone? Okay, and warrant number 4?
I'm all set.
All set?
I've got one.
Okay,
Stuart Hunt Street Bridge, pedestrian bridge, the amount $422,166. Is that the total cost of that project?
No, it is not the total cost. It's cost, pardon me, Dan?
It's the vast majority of it, but there is another request for payment pending when it's complete.
How much of that total are we supposed to recoup from insurance, do you know offhand?
About half of it, it's probably about $296 was insurance. That covers the bridge structure itself, the abutments, which were required to be renewed by the state, is the majority of the additional costs that will be covered by FEMA at a 95% rate.
Okay, thank you. That was the only question I had, Sharon.
okay.
No.
No, Jim?
Oh, I'm good.
Okay. I have a couple. Stuart, AL Sandry, or AR Sandry on the first page, are we getting oil from them now? I haven't seen them on the warrants.
Yeah, that, we may be, since it's an equipment operations account, that's probably gas or oil that we're buying for the vehicles.
Okay.
And
then
we just did the bid for our fuel oil for all of the buildings and our propane for all of the buildings, but this would be vehicle and equipment.
Okay. And then advanced comfort systems, that dehumidification system, is that for the
That's part of the
wastewater?
recreation center upgrade. That's a
The
piece of equipment that we purchased outright.
Okay. And I have one more, I think. The Green Mountain Power bill,
Yes.
that hasn't gone down from the CVS power bills.
And you thought it would?
Yes. Well, we have the new streetlights that are supposed to be energy efficient,
Well,
which I thought
I'm
was
not
going to
sure that the streetlights are entirely in place.
cause things.
We're probably being brought in on a prorated basis as we change out the lights. There are a number of dead-end streets, mine included, that haven't got new lights yet, because I
Okay.
think they intend to replace the poles. So that's not entirely in place yet.
It just looks, I mean, usually it's in maybe the high 20s, not usually 32.
Well, remember, we're using a lot of power at the recreation center to do the construction itself. So our power usage is up in certain of the buildings. I haven't looked at it that carefully, Sharon, but
Okay. It just kind of caught my eye
yeah,
because,
the minor rate decrease, I don't think has yet been approved by the Public Service Board, and I'm sure they'll take their time reviewing that carefully.
it just, you know how Central Vermont gets me. Just hate signing those checks. Okay, that's all I have. Next item on the agenda are citizens. Are there any citizens in the audience? No, I see our friendly Chamber of Commerce Director. Come on up, Joanne.
How many knee replacements do we have for tonight? Would you like to sit?
Yeah, I think so. Thanks. Thank you. Joanne Ehrenhaus, the Bennington Area Chamber of Commerce. And the main reason I'm here today, and Sharon, I know you're going to be speaking tomorrow at the press conference, but to personally re-invite all of the Select Board. Stu, I know you can't make it, and we're going to miss you, but that's okay. And make sure that you come down to number 42 Monument Avenue in Old Bennington. You can park up at the Old First Church barn, or you can park down by the church itself, because we're going to have a big tractor trailer come around 11 o'clock, and it's bringing the Catamount prototype for the 2013 Catamount Prowl Street Art Festival that we're going to be having as a follow-up to our Moose Fests. So it's an opportunity to take pictures and see the original Catamount prototype before he gets embellished, and then you won't see them for quite a while. So we'd like to have you there and share in the festivities. So
What's the date again? I'm sorry.
11 o'clock tomorrow morning, just out front of 42 Monument Avenue, which is where the old Catamount Tavern is located, and that's where the current statue in Old Bennington is located. So we figured that's a really appropriate place to hand it off. And then the Catamount prototype will go to its artist for further work, and then the rest will happen throughout the year in 2013. So thank you. Hope you all will be there, and it should be a good time. Okay?
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Oh, and one more thing. Don't forget to come to Garlic Festival, September 1st and 2nd. Shameless publicity. Thank you.
Yes, you'll be back here our next meeting saying
Yeah,
that
I'll be-
again, I'm sure.
Yes, and I'll bring all my video aids. Bye.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, Joanne. Is there anyone else who would like to address something that's not on our agenda tonight? Okay. Next item on the agenda is the airport hangar discussion. And Stu?
Yes,
or-
this is an issue that came up in 2009, and those of you who are on the board will recall, the board took no position, believing that the decision by Business Air and Mr. Corey to donate their hangar to the state of Vermont was really between them. The reason it's back before us, and I talked with folks at the state today, is that personnel changes within the airport or air transportation division of the Agency of Transportation took place in the interim. The ball simply got dropped. The agency has a policy whereby any time that private property is to be donated to the state that is currently paying taxes to a municipality, they would like the municipality to either be in favor of it or not opposed to it. And so it's back before us. This didn't happen in 2009. The state is very, very interested in owning Mr. Corey's hangar, Business Air's hangar, because it will allow them to generate additional revenue at the airport by leasing out the space. So it's back before you. You can take a position in favor, you can take no position at all, or you can oppose it.
Okay. Now, this is just on the building. The state owns the land under the building.
Yes, the hangar is
Which
owned
was
by
leased.
Business Air. The airport property is owned by the state. There are probably some 7 to 8 privately owned hangars located on the site.
Property. Okay.
Got a question for you.
Yes.
Stu, if the state were to acquire it, would that therefore negate any property taxes that they?
Yes, the
Okay.
property itself would become tax exempt. However, in 2009, we had an indication from the state of Vermont that the hangar would then become part of the payment in lieu of tax. That is, all of state property in a given municipality pays a payment in lieu of tax. They realize their property is tax
What's the
exempt.
percentage on that?
I couldn't tell you, because the state has their own formula for assessing the properties. But last year, I think we were paid, for all of the state property in Bennington, we were paid something like $192,000.
What's the benefit to the town if we were to go along with the state?
Well, the benefit to the town, I think, is really that it enhances the airport's ability to generate revenue for itself. As you know, Air Now is no longer in business at the airport. Business Air has several holdings out there that they are looking to sell as part of its downsizing of its operations. This is one way for them to essentially unload the hangar. They have not been able to sell it in the last 3 years, and it gives them a benefit through a donation, gives the state the benefit of owning the hangar and being able to use it.
And what's the downside?
The only downside is that whatever proportionate share of taxes that are paid to the town and Business Air is current, we would not receive. And because Business Air...
I'm sorry, say that again.
We would not receive any real estate taxes. We would receive an in lieu of tax payment. It's not anywhere near what the real estate taxes would be.
And what are we losing if we...
I don't know. Business Air's holdings out there are, I'm going to say, commingled, and that's not meant to mean they're illegal, but the Lister's office weren't able, in the short time I had a conversation with them, to break out the hangar and what taxes it pays for me at this time.
Now, with respect to filling that space that's currently empty, whose responsibility does that become? Does the state actively pursue it, or do they throw it back at us?
No, the state actively pursues it. Mike Harrington and I did attend a meeting out there some time ago where they brought in a number of their property owners and airport users, as well as key officials in the community, to talk about the new aggressiveness that the agency is going to be taking as far as utilizing their airports. They really want to make them, in a sense, begin to pay for themselves. So they have a very aggressive approach to bringing in additional customers who would use the hangar, would use the airport for transport, for stopovers, for whatever, and also to begin to return flying lessons to the airport to improve the numbers of people in the community that might have access to the airport. So from the state's perspective, this is important to them because it gives them a greater ownership of the airport properties that are available to them. And
Is there a possibility that we could get passenger service out there, or is it too small to,
right.
I mean, the little commuter
I think
jets
that would
that they have
depend.
now?
Well, we're not going to be Rutland Airport or Burlington Airport.
No.
Our runway is not sufficiently long to provide major passenger service. Could that mean that a small company might offer contracted services out of this airport on small planes, destination flights? That could happen. Not happening now, but it could happen.
Okay.
Stuart, does the state have an option of not including that in the pilot program?
Well, there was the question at the time in 2009 about whether or not transportation properties are included, because as I understand it, the district highway office, which is a very functional transportation entity, is not included in the payment in lieu of tax. We were told at that time that the airport property, the hangar itself and the hangars that the state's own, would be included. And as far as I know, that has not changed. There's not been a law that has changed that.
So okay, that's one question. Another one I had is, in his email, Mr. Corey says here that basically the impediment to the sale is that it's located on an airport which receives federal funds. The condition of the funding is that all properties of the airport are restricted to aeronautical use. I guess I'm just curious as what the state plans on using that for, aeronautical-wise, that Mr. Corey couldn't do.
They would use it, obviously, to look for lease to private pilots or commercial pilots who might need the space for their own purposes.
I guess I'm just curious why the state thinks it's a viable option for them to do that, but he can't seem.
Well, I think that's that goes to a question of what is Mr. Corey's interest. If Air Now and Business Air are truly no longer using the airport for their business purposes, for him to go out and lease the building and try to manage the building and maintain the building, I mean, I can't answer for Dave in this particular case,
Sure.
but I think it's just a matter of, he owns a piece of property that
Right.
he no longer cares to maintain or actively pursue.
And I guess that being said, I sort of feel it's his piece of property if he wants to donate it to the state. Who are we necessarily to stand in the way? It's unfortunate to lose it off the grand list, but I don't really think that we don't have the power to stop it if they want to go ahead and do it. I just,
You're right, Justin, we can't stop it.
I've dealt with them several times in the past when they were up and running, and one of the things that happened up there was they had a business plan that was, kind of on a time basis. Its day has come and gone. It was a very successful business. While they were flying a lot, they were utilizing the hangar as a maintenance and repair shop that pretty much anybody up at the airport could benefit from. They had parts departments, and they had, it was a full service station basically for the airport. With the loss of those services, I think that has become less lucrative for them because, it kind of maintained itself, was the understanding I had. We actually rented space from them to do jobs, and because the hangars were so big, we could pull trucks and buses and things in there. I don't see that happening. I don't see somebody coming in and doing that again. Perhaps the state can break the space up and have a repair shop or something like that can be utilized by the general public instead of somebody pulling DC-3s inside on a regular basis. So I'm not opposed to it on that thing. I mean, it is unfortunate to see a business like that,
Sure.
go, but it's kind of like making telephone booths. It's what they did just doesn't, the business doesn't operate that anymore, and they just saw a level of obsolescence that they got hit by. So.
I guess I just think of it as the reality of the situation is if the
Yeah.
business isn't operating out of there anymore, what's the likelihood that somebody's going to be able to continue to pay a tax payment on a property that they can't utilize?
Yeah,
Right,
that-
right.
That's my
I
thought.
think that's the inevitable.
I mean,
Right.
he's been keeping the taxes current so far, but it may come to the point where he can't pay the taxes anymore, so we'd lose it anyway,
And
so.
if the state is aggressively, marketing it, that's,
And they
how many
may have
businesses could
a
we
use of their own that
start?
they're,
Yeah.
that they want to use it for, too. They may want to set up some kind of a repair or, just some use, an airport use.
So the taxes that are being paid right now, is it based on the $1.1 million that it's currently valued at, or is,
No, I couldn't tell you, Chris, I didn't.
so this is the entire property? So it
Well,
wouldn't
I
be-
mean, this is a 2009 piece. It was valued at that time at 1.1 million. I couldn't confirm today that it's valued still at 1.1 million. Its use has stopped. It's fallen into probably disuse. We've seen the grand list this year go down. A lot of properties that were on the grand list for higher income properties that are commercial properties have been reduced because they are not being used. So I couldn't confirm that, Chris.
And you said the taxes were up to date, was that correct?
Yes.
On the project?
Yep.
And it's a nice facility. It would be nice to see it used somehow. It's really an excellent.
So Stuart, what's the action that the board needs to make to,
I think that the board can vote to take no action, no position, I should say, or they can vote to be in favor of the action or oppose the action. The last time the board took no action, and that was I think, a consensus. I don't think there was a motion to take no action. The board simply decided that, look, it's none of our business. It's between Mr.
So-
Corey and the state.
We can just do this by consensus if we have support for the action,
I
or how would you like to?
I think that maybe it may be in our best interest to draft a letter that says we're not in opposition, as opposed to,
Being in favor or taking no position?
right, so I guess I
And
would make that motion that the town just not be in opposition to the,
Why would you go with
just
that?
to the private transfer, you're not promoting necessarily, but you're saying you're not looking to stand in the way of it either. I just, that's my thought.
Just being neutral on, what's the benefit of that, Stu? Just being neutral on it?
Well, I don't think you're being neutral. You're just saying that you're not taking opposition to the fact that the state and a private entity are going to have a real estate transaction. The question is, do we support it or oppose it?
With the information available, I'd support it.
Yeah, I think that's what I've heard around the table, that we all support the move.
Okay, I'll go along with that. I think we're the other way, maybe a little bit more prudent, but whatever gets it done, so. I made a motion. If somebody wants to second it, then
A second,
we can go Jim's way.
or make a motion to endorse.
What is the
Here,
motion?
wait a minute.
Yeah, let's,
I'm confused.
I made a motion that we draft a letter saying that we don't take opposition. We do not take any opposition to the transfer.
And you can withdraw that motion if you'd like, or someone can second it and we vote on it, but it would,
I'd second that. I'm fine with that. A letter of, we would not, if that's what the owner of the property wishes to do, we have no opposition to that. And not like,
yeah, I mean, I don't think
I'm
we have to
actually
say
okay
we
with that, too.
support it. I think
Right.
as long as we don't oppose it,
I'd
then
be
he
willing
can
to
go ahead
second
and do
it
that.
in that language.
Essentially, it's the same thing. I think it's
Basically,
Yeah.
it
You
is
just-
the same
Yeah, it
thing.
a little bit of a language semantics.
Yeah, it's a subtle difference, but I think that's kind of how I feel about it.
Right.
All right, so I have a motion on the floor. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the Old Castle Water Service.
Yes, and this was a question that came up at the last meeting, and we've taken the time to run numbers for not only a new 2-inch water service, which would provide simply sprinkler protection to the new Old Castle Theater building. We also ran numbers to do a 4-inch service, which would then enter the building and be broken into sprinkler and domestic. The least expensive alternative, and the one before you tonight, the one which Old Castle would like to see, is a 2-inch water service specifically for sprinkler. We met with Eric Peterson and Chuck Putney. As I indicate here in my memorandum, Old Castle is asking the board to help with this project by providing labor and equipment to do the work. They will buy the equipment that is necessary to do the new tap, which is a total of $1,832 as shown here. And they're asking if the board is willing to allow the water department to do the tap and the work involved, getting the tap made at the main and into the property. They will then take it from the shut-off into the building. That would not be our responsibility. The cost here is estimated at $3,547, labor and equipment. And so I put that before you. This is a water fund. If it is approved by the board, it's a water fund, and I put in quotes expenditure because we're not actually, all we're doing is providing the labor and equipment. One could argue that we'll be using that labor and equipment elsewhere if we're not doing it here, but it would, in a sense, be a donation by the town water fund to the theater in order to help it meet its sprinkler needs. There are several other options available to you if you're concerned about the fact that this is an enterprise fund. It's fee-supported, not tax-supported. The general fund, through you folks, could vote to underwrite that donation and make a contribution to the water fund to offset those costs. Or you could simply say, no, we're not willing to do that in some fashion.
Have they approached the owner of the property? Meaning Mr.
I
Greenberg?
can't tell you whether they've approached the owner or not. They've approached the town.
This is a nonprofit, is it not?
Yes.
What was done historically with respect to the Surdam building? You had, from what I understand, a pipe had to be run from Pleasant Street all the way to Main Street?
Actually, no. In the Surdam situation,
Right.
and I detailed that in a separate memo.
It's right here.
Right, but I don't see a figure there.
Well, it was over $40,000. What happened in that?
And what part of that $40,000 did the town cover?
The town covered the new water main through the town's property to the flush hydrant or the shut-off.
And that was $40,000?
It was more than that, actually, but around 45. And each of those property owners that will now have access to that line will be billed a prorated share based on their flows of that entire amount, ultimately paying back the town for the installation. The reason we went that way with L&M Realty when they built their building is in order for them to get access to the water main, they would have had to have crossed Main Street. And on their side of the property, on their side of Main Street, there's underground utilities, there's phone, there's electric, there's a whole host of things. You get about halfway across the street, you run into the municipal sewer, and on the far side of the street is the water main. The concern was that it would be very costly for them to do that, and we didn't want the other property owners that were adjacent to them as they upgraded to face the same cross-connection. Tears up the street, it's concrete underlaid, so you never get a nice, smooth street in the end. It rises and falls in the wintertime. So we contracted, in this particular case with Jerome Construction, to install a new water main that comes all the way in through the town property in the parking lot to serve the rear of those buildings. All of those that are sort of highlighted in black on your copy, which include Bank North, the Masonic Temple, Surdam, Post, Tim Smith, and he's not the sole owner, but the new apartments there, Wagner and Woltman, all of those folks at some point will have access when they need to upgrade to that water main at the back of the property, and they will pay a prorated share of the cost.
So those new condominiums didn't tap into that? When he was redoing those?
They tied into that, yes.
They did, okay.
Yes, if they, and I say that with the caveat, Sharon, that if they had to upgrade their service in order to create those units. And I'm assuming that they did because they came after the fact.
Okay.
Go ahead, Justin.
Sorry, Greg.
No, go ahead.
Stuart, the total amount to the town that we're looking at here is $3,547.
That's correct.
And what's Old Castle's share in this and the work they're gonna do? Do you know what the figure on what that amount would be?
Once you get beyond the shut-off, I don't have a clue. They're going to have to drill through the building. They're going to have to push that 2-inch line into the building and then run it through to the spaces that are deemed to need sprinkler.
Do you have a feel for what it may cost to have a private entity do this work?
I don't.
And the reason I ask that is just, you kind of touched on it, and that was the first thought that I had was, dealing with an enterprise fund here and the water fund that we've been trying to build up now for the last couple of years to pull out of it in this nature. I think it's important to support this project, but I'm just trying to think of the best way to do it. I was curious if, possibly making some sort of donation to Old Castle out of our contingency.
In other words, bid the work, have a contractor do it. We oversee it because we want to oversee the tap.
Right.
And see if the contractor can do it for less.
Yes, and then, that would take it out of the enterprise fund of the water fund, and we could pay for it out of the general fund, out of the select board contingency budget, or something of
Or
that
we
nature.
we could donate the money from the general fund to the enterprise fund to reimburse ourselves.
We
for
could,
that.
yeah, I mean.
That came out as the less
That may be
expensive way to do it.
a cleaner way
yeah.
to do it.
It could be.
Yeah, depending on the
I'm
bid.
not sure, that's why I just asked if,
I mean, what kind of time constraint are they under? Or
Well,
does
they're
it make a
hoping to
difference?
be able to open the theater in October.
Fast.
With another 2 weeks, set them back tremendously? I can't answer that question. But, I mean, if your goal is to find a way to support the old castle and make some sort of a donation, let's find out what a private contractor would bid on the project. And I'll be back to you in 2 weeks.
I mean, we can, just given them these figures and stuff, we can get a bid fairly quickly from someone, can't we?
Well, we know we understand what it would take. A contractor may in fact charge less per hour for some of its equipment. I don't know.
how quickly can we spring into action on the water department side if we choose to go this route?
It would probably take us a week to schedule it, because we have commitments that we're making to stay ahead of highway projects.
I want to support this, I want to make sure we're doing it in the most prudent fashion.
I do too. I would like to support it because, you know, I frankly would stand to benefit once, as, you know, with my cart there. However, you know, Jason brought up at the last meeting, and I think it's something that several customers brought up to me over the intervening time with our last, from our last meeting, of precedent. And, you know, if we do this for Old Castle, as much as I would like to do that, how can we reject others? Sure.
Well, here, I mean, I don't mean to argue with you about precedent, but I think each board, when they make a decision such as this, to step outside what the normal arena would normally call for, in a sense, it's precedent. It means that someone else can ask the same question. But you would have to weigh, what is the benefit to the community for doing this particular project? Why did we do this at that time? And, you know, is the subsequent project of similar benefit, of similar need? So precedent is there, yes, Jim. It puts you in the situation of having said, well, we did it once. Doesn't mean you have to do it every time.
I think you bring up a very important point and a convincing point, and that is, you know, the overall benefit to the town in general with respect to Old Castle opening, and that's very compelling.
Well, and each request is unique in itself, that it has to, I mean, it's a separate beast, so you look at each one differently, even though it may be a similar request.
And that's why we meet twice a month. So we, you know, so we can weigh these options. But just to clarify one thing, Stuart, that building is still on the grand list, right?
Yes.
It's occupied by a nonprofit organization, but it still pays property taxes from the owners.
Yes, it's actually owned by the Greenberg family.
The Greenberg family, right. So it's still paying, it's still generating property taxes. It's town infrastructure that needs to be improved to help a development that we all seem to be very much in favor of and excited about. So I kind of take the same angle as Justin. I think it's a good thing to do. I support it. Where the dollars come from and how to do it is you know, is of interest. So if we can take one more look at it,
Yep.
I'd like to see
We'll be back to you in 2
how we
weeks.
can do that.
Now, this will be a metered service when it is done, correct?
Yes. I think the service is probably metered now.
Already.
The sprinkler service lines are generally not metered. Those are emergency use, fire protection. We don't meter.
You don't want anybody shutting them
Sprinkler.
off.
That's right.
For non-payment. All right, and do we know if Old Castle is responsible for the water bill? Or if
I'm not
that's-
getting into their negotiations with
Okay.
the Greenberg family.
Okay. All right, so we're going to relook at this. We're going to have the town staff or Old Castle.
We'll get a bid out, we'll
Bid.
get some private contractor prices, make a comparison, and be back to you with what's the least expensive alternative.
Okay. And if Old Castle is under a real time crunch, maybe we could send out an email just to
Well-
give us a heads up and, no?
I would then ask for a special meeting.
Okay,
I wouldn't want to do that kind of business by email,
okay,
okay?
sure, thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda is Catamount Rotary, the alcohol waiver for the car show, and we have a letter from Eddie Rates, the co-chair, requesting a waiver for September 13th through the 17th at the pavilion, or up at Willow Park near the Jim Ross Pavilion. What is
move
your
that we-
pleasure? We've done this in the past.
I'll move that we grant the waiver.
I'll second it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? Okay, there we go. Okay, next item on the agenda is the Bennington Revolving Loan Program Review.
And if I could lead off, Sharon, I mean, basically,
You may.
Mike has provided you with the updated revolving loan program description and application. The program itself has new limits. We're seeking to increase the amount of money we could loan to a business from $25,000 to, I'm sorry, Mike, is it 100,000 or 50?
100,000.
100,000. That's the only change that, not this week, but I think probably next week after we've all had a chance to digest it, we will be back for you to ask you to adopt a new program as outlined here. but because of some of the concerns and questions that have come up recently about loans and how these programs work, we took a hard look at the program itself, revised it, revised the application form so it provides us with more information. Ultimately, if you want that information, it provides you with more information. So that's what we're here to present to you tonight, and Mike is here to answer questions if you have them. We've also, further down in the packet, we've talked about the actual status of the loan programs. I think that was a question last time, and there we outlined for you all of the loans that are out there, who is outstanding, and we highlight a variety of those. And Mike has also gone so far as to give you 3 years' worth of experience going back over time. So those are the two items that I think we can realistically discuss publicly. As usual, I hesitate to jump into anything which starts to call into question people's ability to pay, but it is a matter of public record, and we have provided it to you and are willing to discuss it should you wish to.
If it's okay with the board, maybe we can start with the loan program description and application, and then if we have questions about the status of the loan program. Just so you have an understanding of where I'm coming from, when I took over this position a few months ago, looking at the loan program description, which you have an original copy, it looks like it was done on a typewriter there, it dates back to what I can determine to be somewhere around the late 90s. And based on that, some of the purpose description on the front page and some of the information within the packet was out of date. So just as part of routine maintenance, I looked at the program to see if there was any language that needed to be updated. And it'll be a continuing thing for me, that I'll continue to look at what best practices are and feedback from either the board or others to see what ways going forward can we best meet the needs of our community through the use of this loan program. The biggest changes that you'll see in this are on page 2, where you see the loan terms, and the new packet you'll see has the pictures on the front of it. So the updated version has a new cover to it, but the loan terms, which identify additional funding, recognizing that many of the projects that businesses are looking to do today far exceed the $25,000 limit that we've currently used in the past. The other piece to that is you'll see an addition in the appendix where I've tried to add some additional resources for people. So if you identify back there, that you'll see there's a sample business plan that people can use as a sample, as well as electronic copies if we need to, a checklist for people. Jim, do you have a question? You just looked like you were...
Nope.
This is the one that's the draft, Mike, correct?
This is the draft.
Okay.
Yes.
I do have a question. First of all, I'd like to point out that I appreciate the updating.
Great.
And it just looks more professional. And I think that's really important when we're dealing with something like this. But we have currently a maximum of 25,000.
Yes.
And what we're looking to do is increase that maximum to 100,000.
The possibility. So the process still remains the same. It's still up to the recommendation of the town in conjunction with final approval by the select board.
So I know since I've been on the board, this program has been extremely successful for businesses in the area. Particularly Main Street businesses have been pretty successful with this. So I see the potential for, growth here, but I wonder if $100,000 then puts us in a larger risk pool. When a business fails at $100,000 is owed to us.
Sure.
To write $100,000 off as opposed to $25,000. Affects us a little bit differently.
Yeah.
So
For sure. I mean, I can speak to my own perspective on that, and I'm open to any feedback. My belief would be that, because as I'm reviewing this and I'm going forward with other loans, there's some additional information that I'm requiring of people that we haven't always required in the past, like full business plans, or the identification of specific collateral that they're going to put against the loan. So, and many times in the past, as I'm reading through some of the old loans, we've kind of blanketed said all fixtures and purchases and equipment, but really as we move forward, it's what are those? Let's identify serial numbers on those and take pictures of those, and we have a good log of what is ours, what do we own, what can be used as collateral. It does become a tricky situation, especially when you start talking about somebody who might want to put a second mortgage on their home, because I don't think at any point the town wants to be in a position where it's repossessing people's homes from them. It's just a bad place for us to be. So I think it certainly takes additional due diligence on our part to make sure if we're going to go to that maximum limit, therefore maybe long-standing companies that have proven themselves over time but are looking to make some type of growth effort. So I think it's the question of whether you're spending that money on a startup business or whether it's a relatively more low-risk situation, which might be a growth opportunity.
Just one more question.
Yeah.
What happens with this, if I understand this right, people who go to, say, the Bank of Bennington or another bank with this plan to start a business, and they get denied, they still have an option to come to us for funding because we're not as strict. By raising this to $100,000, do we then become, you had said that there are additional regulations that are that come along with this. Does it make it tougher for someone who wants to start a business to...
I don't think necessarily there are formal additional regulations, but I think it's probably more prudent on behalf of the Select Board that when they start talking about 50, 75, and 100,000, that we take a much deeper look into the individual or the organization to say what is their ability to pay back this amount. So I think those companies that are still looking for the 15,000 or the 25,000 because they've been rejected from a bank, and I would say that we are probably as diligent, or at least strive to be as diligent as some of the financial institutions in town, but we recognize we're taking more of a risk because it's a high-risk program, and that's what it's designed for.
And I see this as an opportunity to be a little bit more aggressive with economic development and allowing people to start a business with, more...
Attracting bigger fish.
Exactly, but $100,000 makes me nervous because of the risk involved at this point. So.
Well, you'd certainly want to look at, if it was a startup, some kind of equity injection from the borrower, their credit worthiness. I mean, you'd dig a little bit deeper into their financial well-being.
If I may, Sharon, we've reached that $100,000 plateau by waiver, at least in one occasion that comes to mind, for a business up on not Harwood Hill, but East Road. And they have continued to be successful. Remember, the program is not just for people who can't get financing to start a business. It's also for job growth. It's for successful businesses who can't necessarily get all of the financing that they need from a bank, and we fill the gap. We help make it happen. So it's, yes, the limit is higher. We've reached that limit by waiver in at least one case and possibly others over the years. But I think that it falls to the staff and to the board to be more diligent the higher the number. But if you've got a company that is a successful company and they're looking to expand and the banks just aren't willing to go to that next step, they'll give them some money, but they won't take it all the way. That's our position. Okay. We might be in a second or a third position behind a couple of financial institutions, but if we're creating jobs, that's what they're there. That's what we're there for.
And it can be an aggregate of 2 or 3 smaller loans to reach
Yes.
that 100,000. Didn't we have a cap on one of our loan programs, though? One individual could only borrow up to a maximum.
That's on the housing loan program
Okay.
where you have multiple individuals owning multiple houses.
Okay.
And that's
what I thought.
50,000, right?
Yes, that's
Yeah.
50,000.
So, and just one more question. How aggressive are we right now when it comes to taking care of those who are delinquent?
I didn't quite hear you. The
Those who are
delinquent loans?
delinquent, yeah, are we going to their houses with baseball bats?
Not quite that far, but we have got the town manager now who is signing the delinquent notices, which ironically causes more people to want to pay their bill when they receive something from the town manager.
understand it myself.
I would say that and again, I can only speak to the time that I've been here. There are, and you'll see that in the status of the loan programs, there's a handful, probably 4 or 5 loans that
Not nearly as bad as I thought it was.
no, and some of those, you'll see that they may only be 1 month behind, so there may be just a crossing in the mail of some point because they're not necessarily routinely 1 month behind. So there's really only 3, I think, if I remember correctly, that are significantly overdue. And those are people we continually try to reach out to. There are ones that we've even written off officially, so they're out of our books, but we continue to try to collect on that money. Again, I think we have to be, and I say we, but really I need to be, in my role, much more diligent in terms of the requirements we put people under in terms of submitting a loan application and filling out and what I call putting skin in the game. You know, I want us to make sure that it does require some effort on behalf of the applicant to really collect all the information and present a good case for the funding, but then also working with that applicant to make sure that they're paying the fees and doing what's appropriate. And you know, I think that's our goal moving forward. So.
Justin?
One of the stipulations is correct that they need to be, a loan applicant needs to be turned down by a bank in order to apply for this loan?
Turned down either for the full amount or they're not willing to cover the full amount.
Okay, so that was my question. So if somebody applies to a bank for $200,000 and they get approved for $100,000, we're saying that meets that stipulation?
Yes. Yeah, and again, it's we've done a couple different things in the past where we say, you know, again, just because they apply for, let's say, the other 100,000, doesn't necessarily mean that we have to grant that full amount, or we can say up to a certain amount. So we usually work based on what the comfortability is of my office, but also with the board.
In this amount right here, $397,000, that's the current account balance for what's available for the BRLP. Is that?
Yes.
I guess what just makes me nervous about that, and, you know, it's round numbers, it's just what happens to be there, but, you know, you look at a $100,000 loan, we're talking about 25% of our current available money to give out. Now, we could have $1 million in there right now because we haven't made loans, and you'd be talking about 10%, so,
Yeah.
you know, it sounds worse maybe than it is, but
I think that's a very valid point.
I guess I wouldn't want to start putting out, you know, obviously in a $100,000 loan, we want to scrutinize that significantly more at the board level and also at the application level. But I wouldn't want to maybe make our application process so, you know, difficult that somebody who's going to possibly apply for significantly less
Sure.
amount of money feels, you know, that maybe they don't have the expertise to go through with this.
And I would say that for the most part, our application requirements are the same. So it's more about what additional information would the board like to see and what additional conversations would we like to have with the applicant the more the amount gets. So you're definitely right.
It's kind of just like at the bank. I mean, we have the same application for a $25,000 loan that we do for a $1 million loan, but the supporting data for each loan is different. So, you know, it's just the amount of, how far you want to dig into the customer's financial history or.
I guess I would just think maybe if, you know, I would like to see as a board member, if we're going to hand out $100,000, we should have some very specific criteria for how we're going to do it.
Yeah.
You know, and it should be the same for everybody that comes in here. You know, we should really identify what the criteria is when we get to that amount of money.
I mean, we ask for the basic information from everybody, but you may want to do 3 years of tax returns instead of 1 year of tax returns, or
And you get to, you know, we
I
get
mean,
a
you-
personal guarantee on this, but you get to a point when you start talking about $100,000 that, you know, how good is that personal guarantee? I mean, you can't get blood from a stone, you can only get what somebody has, you know, they can guarantee you're gonna pay it all day long, but if they don't have it to give, the bottom line is you're never gonna get it.
One of the things I like of what Mike's brought is, you know, the addition of business plan, other resources and things like that. You know, we're worried about, you know, the size of a $100,000 loan, but you can combine a bunch of these loans to get over $100,000 that we've written off that
Sure.
don't look like they got through the first year of payments. And, you know.
Those may be more risky in a lot
Yeah,
of ways.
and, well, I mean, we were already identifying these as high-risk loans because another institution has decided not to loan the money. Now, these days, that doesn't have to be too risky. It's very hard for businesses to get money these days, so these programs are very valuable. But if we can, you know, get a little deeper into not as much their financials, just the numbers, but why their business is going to succeed and what their resources are.
And most of those
you
loans
know.
that are probably written off too also represent some that have come out of the microloan program,
Okay.
which were extremely high risk.
Yeah.
They were startup businesses. You know, so I think we also look at what is the level of, you know, has the business survived for 30 years or
Right.
40 years? And those are good questions that we should be asking
Yeah.
and saying, what does this 100,000 or 75,000 represent? And does it create jobs? And is there less of a likelihood that they would default on that?
Yeah, I mean, I got turned down for a $35,000 loan 5 years ago to try and consolidate debts, and it was, you know, right when people just weren't lending money. And, you know, I wound up putting it on credit cards and paying it off in a year. And, you know, it's like, no, they saved me 5% because I put it on 0% credit cards. But, you know, I talked to Scott about this, and, you know, I had this big pile of paper, and I just didn't have the time. You know, it's like to fill all this stuff out and dig this stuff up again and sit, and it's like, you know, I was like, you know, this is going to work. But if you're starting out and that's your only option, you know, you should be able to explain to somebody and verbalize why your company's going to work, what your plan is, because as we know, most businesses fail in the first year because of lack of management or lack of forethought. So.
And again, I'd be happy to entertain any, over the next 2 weeks, any thoughts or suggestions in terms of what might be additional information that we'd like to see. You know, so feel free to think about
What
that.
are our resources for evaluating an application? You know, I mean, a bank, you know, goes from office to office to office and everybody checks things. What do we actually do?
In terms of when somebody submits an application.
Right.
There are the requirements for the application, which require not just the application, but 3 years financials, if it's an existing business, or additional tax returns if it's a startup business.
Who evaluates that?
It's usually
your
myself,
department?
and I'll usually meet with Stu, and sometimes either Dan or Larry, and then
Right.
bring it to the board for the board to evaluate it. So there are multiple people, and I've even talked with Sharon, we just haven't gotten there yet, of putting together a loan review committee. So it doesn't rest necessarily with one person,
Right.
because then you get into things like personal preference, and I'd rather keep it relatively neutral. So, you know, those are certainly things that we're considering.
Hey, Mike.
Good.
This is not my line of work, but my question is, it might be just a stupid question, but I'm looking at the figure, just about $400,000 is what's available in our account.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
So I guess my concern is, what service are we doing for those who are trying to set up a business if 4 businesses or 4 potential businesses come and ask us for $100,000, but wipes all that money out?
Yeah.
So at that point, we're not able to assist anyone else. So
Yeah.
if I'm, you know, I would be more than happy to support 10 businesses at 25,000 or 10 potential businesses at 50,000 or something along those lines, rather than 4 businesses at 100,000, and then it kind of bleeds the, you know, or dries up the well, you know, for everyone else. So I'm not quite sure how that would help us, you know, economically if we're almost making it harder for people to take out this loan.
And again, not to set precedent, but I think each time somebody applies, you have to weigh not just the application, but what's the current status of our loan? You know, are we sitting on $400,000, or are we sitting on $150,000? And if we don't necessarily, if we feel that the awarding of that money to the applicant is going to deter others or take away from others, you know, I think that has to be taken into consideration too.
And also the payback, the length it takes for one to pay this back is significantly longer
Yes.
than it would for someone to pay back $25,000.
Yeah.
Does that impact this, the fact that this money is tied up? And, the amount of time that it takes to generate that money back?
Yep.
But it was 20 years was the length of 100,000.
It depends on the
20-year
amount,
amortization.
but yes, for the 100,000, it would be 20 years.
And for a $25,000 right now, it's not that long?
No, it's
like 4 years?
15.
10?
Why did I think it
You're
was
moving it
4?
to 10.
Well, we have
In the draft.
balloon, we generally have a
that's
balloon payment that we're amortizing the note over the life of 15 years in many cases, but we're looking for payment in full within that 5 or 10-year balloon.
It just lowers the payment.
We can get the money back.
I'd like to think that if we're lending somebody $100,000, or if they're looking for $100,000, we're talking about capital improvements and something that's very significant and lasting. So there's something there, if things do change, there's at least something there at the end. It's not just, hey, I got a great idea, give me $100,000.
I'm assuming that this is a self-sufficient program. We're not, it's
It
based
is.
on
Right.
payments that are paid just
Yeah.
as if it were a bank.
Yeah.
In fact, it pays to the general fund some $45,000 a year out of its interest bearing because of the administrative help that we provide to it.
Does anybody else have any other questions?
Couple more. In terms of
Okay.
loans that have been written off or are delinquent, without going into specific cases.
Yep.
I just did a quick math, and it looks like in the last 3 years, we've written off about $120,000 in loans. Does that seem right, or am I looking at something wrong here? What are we doing to try and recoup, other than sending out letters? What's, a serious plan we have going forward to try and recoup some of this money that's already been written off, and then also some of these other folks that have outstanding loans that are, that aren't paying at the moment, that are still on the books? What's the next step with trying to bring this money back into this program?
Stuart would be better to speak in terms of past years. I can tell you from my focus going forward, and I've said this a couple different times, is that I would rather identify people who, even if they found themselves in a tough spot, for us to allow them to pay over a longer period of time than to just write the loan off completely and say, well, we're never going to see that money again, see you later.
Well, just because we've taken it off our books doesn't mean that,
Right.
we shouldn't be
Right,
trying to
exactly.
recuperate that.
And I would say that there's only, out of these, when we look over the past 3 years, only the most recent are those that we continually try to reach out to. I would say not many of the older ones into the 08s, 09s. And Stu, I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, I think that in the past, where there was identifiable collateral and the business went out and the collateral was either sold as part of the business closure, the bankruptcy or whatever, in many of those cases, it's a simple write-off. We lost. We invested and we lost, as did a number of other investors. But where the collateral was obtainable, we have gone after the collateral. In a couple of cases that I can think of, we've actually taken the collateral and resold it at a reduced value, of course, because it was depreciated. Or we've made arrangements with the business owner who was closing the business to, as Mike has suggested, pay us out over a longer period of time. Many of these people.
Do we know if those people are, out of what we're looking at here, actively making, holding up to that elongated agreement?
I'm going to say the ones that I know of, yes, they are. We've got two of the microloans that are, right now, the people have been unresponsive. But we've just sent them relatively strong letters about pursuing the collateral that they gave us. And I don't know what that will generate for us, but historically, I think we've been pretty successful. We've had people that have, after years and years and years, have suddenly become successful in another form of business, and have simply, as part of a refinancing of whatever the business was, have come back and paid us back monies that we had long ago written off.
So when I'm looking at these, though, when I look at this list right here, this is town loans written off over 3 years, I'm correctly assuming that we have not taken any collateral from them, we haven't we haven't recouped any equipment. This is the amount that, or even if we have, they still currently owe this amount up to this date. Is that, these accurate amounts? For example, if you look at the first one at the top, I'm not going to read the name, but it says $21,000. If we've, is that what they currently owe as of today?
I'm going to say yes, that is currently what they owe.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what's concerning when I look at this list is 7 out of 10 of them are revolving loan customers, I guess. And they're only within a couple of $1,000s of the actual loan amount.
Yes.
When you have the $25,000 that was a loan that was given, and the write-off amount was just about $22,000, it looks like that on just about every one of them.
That was
like I said, 7 out of 10. So
Yeah. That was a red flag for me when I viewed it, which was part of the reason for the additional requirements to review a loan, like the, again, people can certainly say and write down whatever they want in terms of that, and if everything looks good, sometimes you just can't foresee what's going to happen down the road.
Well,
but I think we need to be certainly more diligent in how
I agree, and I agree with the concept of the program. I hate to compromise what, that and add on more regulations. But, and I can't believe I'm going to say this because it's a little out of character, but my heart tells me, let's go with 200,000. Let's, really be aggressive with this. But my gut is telling me that we should maybe only go to 50,000 because the 100,000 just seems so risky right now. But just by looking at it on paper, I haven't been in the meetings that you're into, so you probably have a little bit more knowledge on it than I do, but it just seems like a big risk at this point in time.
And that's actually the feedback we're looking for, Chris. I mean, the draft that you have before you, we're not asking you to adopt it tonight. We understand there are 2 board members that haven't seen it yet. And so we'll be back to you in 2 weeks to talk about whether or not this should be adopted in this format. And maybe you're correct. Maybe the majority of the board will think that 100,000 is too high. We should be looking at something less than that. As I said before, the board has gone beyond the 25,000 limit by waiver, by making a decision to waive the requirement and go forward based on a recommendation from the staff. Those loans appear to have been very successful. And so, perhaps we're being over-aggressive in putting this before you in this fashion.
Can I just clarify one more thing for us?
Sure.
So, just to get back to this for a second, Stuart, the loans that have been written off, all these individuals have recently been sent another notification from the town, is that?
No, only there are 2 microloans that are shown there.
Okay.
They both received, because those are relatively recent, they have both received relatively stern letters. The amounts that are owed are relatively small compared to some of the others, but looking at some of these that we were not successful, there are extenuating circumstances in a number of them, without getting into names.
Something we should talk about in executive session, or?
Well, it's just,
I'm just curious, basically what I'm thinking is, I think we talked a lot about precedent tonight. I think we set a really bad precedent if we start just letting some of these things go. I think people need to realize, as much as we want to drive economic development in this town and we want to push these loan programs forward, but it has to be taken serious that when you borrow money in a collateral position with a personal guarantee, that you understand that you are making that personal guarantee and agreeing to pay that, that money back. This program exists for a reason, and to let these things go off into the wind is kind of a waste. I would like to see us, at least at a minimum, recontact these folks that are on this list, get an update from them, and just see what kind of response we can get. Is that something we can do?
I'm happy to do that. Stu's comfortable? Yeah.
very much so. I mean, I really, looking back at some of these in 08 and 09, I mean, it's been such a long time, I can tell you.
Because, some of these, we could be pressing a time period where if we're going to take an action on it, we need to do it, especially getting back into 08.
I've got a question for you with respect to these What kind of latitude does Michael have or you have with respect to either restructuring the loan? And what I mean by that is maybe having the pavement and extending it? At least we're getting something.
Any time, I mean, there are some times that some of these settlements may have been negotiated at the time, and generally that's something that the staff would do, and then the board has to know that we're writing this off. So a board in the past has seen all of these as being written off.
So no attempt was made to restructure the loan?
Or the people were unresponsive.
When you say written off, it's taken off our books.
That's right. It's not necessarily.
That doesn't mean that we've.
No, it doesn't mean we won't collect the money,
Right.
but in many of these cases, I mean, we can do the research, but looking at some of the names there, especially in one of them, I know that there's no chance you're going to collect any money. And it's one of those things that at the time the loan was written, it seemed like a good idea. This business seemed like it was going to be a good thing, and perhaps it was insufficiently collateralized, or the collateral went with the business when it closed. The business and everything else was sold off to try to pay whatever debts it had, either to the bank or to the state or to the IRS, whatever the number of liens were, and we were in such a low position we weren't going to get anything.
And that's what makes me nervous, because as much as I do think it's a good, I really do agree with Chris. I think, you got to be a little bit of a gambler in some of these situations. There could be the perfect situation where we might want to lend somebody $200,000, but the reality of it is, and you see it right here, personal guarantee or no personal guarantee, you may never recoup it.
You're absolutely right.
Sometimes what looks like a golden goose in the beginning ends up being a...
Now,
Well, then that leads us to the fact that we certainly have to do our due diligence when
No, absolutely. And I
come before us.
I don't know
but-
how I feel about
even
it at this
visiting
point.
them, but
Well, has the topic been brought up that we don't even put a cap on it? What if we had someone
You
come
mean just
in?
based on whatever the applicant?
Have them come in and...
I mean, I'll tell you, most of the applicants that I've looked at so far, they have a very specific project in mind, and we usually, the board approves up to a certain amount, and what they get in the loan is based on receipts they hand in. So it might
So
be
it's a line of
startup
credit?
expense or something like that they
Kind
provide.
of like a construction loan, so we
But it's
pay
a
the
specific
vendor.
project.
It's something's a specific bill that we.
It can't be
we
operating
pay.
costs.
I've got
It
a
has to be-
question for you with respect to this new loan format. Banker lady, am I using the right phrase by collateralization? Have they changed? That is to say, the way that the loan is collateralized, has that changed in any significant way from the past?
It has not.
So that it hasn't?
I haven't changed anything in this format from what we've
That's a
done.
good
But,
idea.
but we-
I mean,
but,
there's only
well,
certain ways
one
you
of the
can
things that Mike,
collateralize a loan.
one of the things that Mike said early on is that because in going back and looking historically at these things, we all become aware of what we didn't do quite right in the past. So we're looking much more critically at the collateral, so that we're not finding ourselves in a position where you've got this broad wording, we're going to get all fixtures and furnitures. We want to know what the fixtures are, we want to know what the furnishings are. We're going to be looking for documentation of those particular pieces of machinery and equipment that people are buying, and that's what we're going to collateralize.
I was just going to say, I'll tell you an example. I was looking back through a previous loan that had been awarded, and a significant amount of the money that was given went to labor, to do the construction, not necessarily equipment that they purchased. And so what ended up in
Has
the
that
end
been
was that we
acceptable?
awarded a certain amount of money, and we didn't necessarily have enough
There was no
collateral to
collateral.
cover the amount that was given, because much of that was done by services provided.
A question for you. Is that permissible under these loan programs, that you can pay for labor? I thought it was for hard assets.
Not your own labor,
Not
sir.
typically, no.
No, construction labor or something like that, if you're doing an improvement, you can be
Construction
paying.
is usually materials, It can be for labor subcontractors sometimes, but.
So,
The only specific piece we have in here in terms of eligibility is that it can't be for operational expense. So it can't go to pay salaries or time, it can't, in terms of the functioning of the business. But we have allowed, if somebody does a construction project in addition, renovation, that they have covered the cost of the work being done as well.
We should probably have a conversation about collateral.
Yeah, and I'm happy to
At some
have that. So, I mean, just knowing what the next step is, if you want to review it and then feed any information or thoughts you have to me, and then we can review it again in 2 weeks. And
Yeah. Does anybody else have any questions right now for Michael?
maybe,
Go ahead, Chris, sir.
well, I was just going to say that maybe we should just hire Mike Bethel to be our collector.
Don't give me any ideas. Thank you very much.
Is a September 24th meeting, Stuart, is that a reasonable amount of time to look for an update on this? I was just thinking, end of the month there, that meeting, by that time.
you mean in terms of contacting the?
Yeah, in terms of
Yes.
the, okay.
That's fine. I mean, I can give you a status,
Thanks.
whether I'll have any additional money or not.
No,
but-
obviously, just for us to see that, that we've actually reached out to the folks. and
Yes. Yep.
Whether they've responded or not. And
That's
the
fine.
response may be no response, but it's just
Yep.
good to know, and then possibly we can decide how to go from there. on those
Yeah, and my
six-
understanding too, the difficult part becomes, I know some of those people on the list have moved out of the area, so they're not even in town any longer. So you gotta find out where they are too, so.
Okay, but the
I'll do my
loan
best.
program description and application update, we are going to readdress in 2 weeks.
That's right.
Okay. So don't throw that away.
Okay.
The only other piece that I want you to just make sure you look at, we didn't talk about it, is the actual application that's in that packet. And that was actually with help from Sharon. It's based off of a model from the industry. So it's a little bit more in-depth, a little bit more professional looking, but also requires some additional information that we haven't asked for in the past. So feel free to take a look at that, and I'll go from there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mike?
Okay, next item on the agenda is the solar farm at the former landfill.
I'll ask Dan to
Dan?
present this one. Dan's been working on this in my absence, and he's got much more information than I do.
And all we're asking for tonight is just consensus to actually move forward with.
That's correct. So, hello, everyone. I've included in your packet some information regarding the organization that has approached the town concerning a solar farm installation at our Holton Lane former landfill location. Really, again, as Sharon mentioned, all we're looking for tonight is whether or not you folks embrace this as a concept that's worth pursuing. And then Stuart and I will work closely with the organization, Encore Redevelopment, who, as you can tell from some of the information I submitted to you, has done some projects in the past quite successfully, similar to this. And what we would do is negotiate terms with that particular organization, bring it back to the board for review and approval. And if you folks approve it, then we would move forward to a formal agreement. But we didn't want to move forward unless the board felt comfortable with regard to the concept of placing a solar farm on that facility, on that land, with the basic concept is a lease payment and a fixed cost for electricity that would be part of a net metering agreement. So there's a significant possibility for an upside if electricity costs continue to rise. But all those specifics, I don't want to get into that this evening because it's part of the ongoing negotiations, but all the specifics we would bring back to you folks. The concept in general is what we're looking for tonight.
Well, it certainly has my support. This is definitely a step that we should be going, as far as I'm concerned. And it's in our town plan, to take action like this. I remember them coming to us, but for some reason I'm thinking that, was that project found not feasible at one
No,
point?
the problem with that, and Stuart can elaborate on this, is 2 years ago, there were some very specific incentives that expired before they could move forward with this project or frankly any other projects of this size. So at this point, according to the folks at Encore Redevelopment, there's a much more stable picture of funding. The cost of the photovoltaics have gone down significantly, so they feel pretty confident that they can attract investors. I'm not going to promise that this is the deal that they're going to attract investors to, but it's certainly one that they're excited about. They contacted us and are very anxious to proceed with negotiations if this board feels comfortable with the concept of a solar farm on that facility.
Currently, the land that this would be situated on is, for all intents and purposes, unusable.
It's a capped landfill, and that's why this is, in my mind, a beautiful deal, because you're going to be able to generate income from a property we probably, for the foreseeable future, wouldn't see any income from, and no real likelihood of any income from. So this is it's why they target these. That's why they target these pieces of property, because they know it's a good deal for the folks that are involved in it, and they can pick them up for a little bit less than a greenfield.
It has my support as a concept, absolutely also, I think.
Yeah, I certainly don't have
I
a
would
problem with
support
it.
going forward with that.
That's all I need, just consensus. We don't want to put a lot of effort into something that you folks don't feel comfortable with, but thank you very much. We'll be back hopefully very soon with a more concrete proposal for you.
Okay, thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Dan.
We'll move on to the manager's report.
Yes, if briefly, I could go back to that warrant question you asked, Sharon. I did have some time to finally go back and take a look at the numbers. In truth, the majority of those expenditures are coming from street lighting, water filtration plant operation, wastewater treatment plant operation, and the police facility. All of those are high-end users of electricity anyway, but even though there is a slight increase in recreational energy use there, the big numbers, wastewater treatment plant, water filtration plant, street lighting, and police facility.
Like, that 42,540.80, do you know what that is right off the top of your head? Is that the streetlights, or is that?
42, that's the wastewater treatment plant.
$13,000
yes.
one?
That's the wastewater treatment plant.
Okay.
And that is typically that high.
Okay. The bottom line just caught my eye, because typically it runs 27, 28,000, something like that, and I don't remember it being 30,000 in the last.
Then we'd better get a solar farm together.
That's solar farm. I have to work on that, yeah.
I did want to clarify that, because I really made an assumption there that was not true.
Well, with all the talk we've had about this energy-saving streetlights that we're going to have and all of this kind of stuff, and then
we
all of a
keep
sudden the
trying.
bill goes up, it's like, wait a minute.
At some point, we'll begin to see those savings.
Okay.
On an annual basis.
All right.
The only action item I have for you tonight in the manager's report is the appointment of the Vermont League of Cities and Towns annual meeting delegate. In order to vote, an individual must be appointed by the board. In the past, and I mean the last 20 years, I have been the delegate appointed by the board to attend the meeting and vote. The annual meeting of the Vermont League of Cities and Towns basically takes a look at its policy statement for each year and its positions going forward into the next legislative session that benefit municipalities, and whether or not there's something that we would support.
I move that we make this year Sue's 21st.
He loves to go.
One second.
It sounds like a lot of fun.
All those in favor? Okay.
Thank
Stuart,
you.
you're going to do it again.
Good to go.
Okay.
I did provide you with a summary of discussions with Casella. I don't have language to present to you, so we're not going to be talking contract amendment at this time, but it appears after conversations with Casella's staff that we can save approximately $10,000 annually by going to what they call a zero-sort recycling system. It will reduce the number of containers, reduce the amount of transports, and therefore provide an annual savings to the community. They are working on the language to put that into place. We are continuing to negotiate with TAM for the composting facility, and TAM has continued to express interest in providing that recycling effort. If in fact he can provide that at a greater savings, this board will have an opportunity to make that change. But I just wanted to let you know that we're continuing to move forward. We're already seeing potentially annual savings of $10,000. We'll have that language for you, and we'll have TAM's contract. I think, is it the next time we plan to have that? You'll be able to take a look at his contract, which is not dependent on changes in recycling. It's a contract where he is going to be leasing land at a specific cost, escalating over time, but on the side, he is going to be trying to show us what savings we might find if we were to go with him for recycling.
A question
Okay,
for you.
so, I'm sorry, so will we have a choice between the two if he comes in?
If in fact his savings
we see
are
two
clearly
proposals?
in excess of what Casella has proposed here, and we feel confident that the language in the contract allows us to make that change, you would be able to make that decision and give us the direction to go forward.
Okay,
What would the length of the proposed contract be?
Casella's contract is a 20-year renewable contract. We have another 10 years to go on that. For Tim, I think we're looking at a 5-year renewable with a maximum of 20 years. 10 years with a 10-year renewal. I mean, folks need a long-term contract, obviously, in order to regain whatever investment they make over time.
okay. Anybody else have any other questions on that? Okay. And the rec center's moving along?
The rec center is on schedule. We provided a brief update for you here. Larry is back from vacation. We'll have for you in your next packet a much more detailed breakdown of the cost. We are continuing to look at some small change orders, mostly having to do with roof repair and things that were attached to the roof that could not be seen at the time that the bid was made. So we're in discussions with the contractor about what is an appropriate change order, what is not, what they should have known. But we're still within that $610,000 budget. At this point, easily within that $610,000 budget. And we're looking perhaps at an opening date, I'm going to say within probably the first 7 to 10 days of September.
Okay.
And a lot of that has to do with the ability to clean the facility after the work is done, get the pool cleaned, as we do on an annual basis, and get it open for business.
Refill up. Okay, that was going to be my question. We knew of a date. Okay, does anybody have any other questions on anything that was in the manager's?
Just one,
report?
I have one, well, more of a request and I guess a question also. So when we get these complaints on a monthly basis, can we get some more information? I don't know who generates these, but, you know, it's kind of generic when we look at the location and who the complainant was. Can we get some more specific information on that kind of, it would almost bring it more in line to what the report we get from, I think Dan generates this on the zoning violations. It's a little bit more specific, and I think it just helps us grasp a better picture of what's going on there.
The zoning violation and the complaint are both generated from the zoning office. We can do that. I think the complaint log is really, may prove to be overwhelming, but I think given the length of this particular month, I don't see why we couldn't add more information to that.
Just, you know, it'd be nice to know what the location was and who the complainant was, and I hope we're not just, and I don't know what the policy is or not, but just taking anonymous complaints and not making people.
We do not, well, we will investigate an anonymous complaint, but generally, if a neighbor or a concerned citizen brings something to our attention, we work hard not to create neighborhood disputes, so we'll try to hold that name back if it's a legitimate complaint. But I think when Kevin is pulling this complaint together for the month of June, some of these he may not have been able to make a finding on.
Sure, maybe if we can get some of the, you know, the information on that and it just comes to the board in a confidential manner. Just, you know, maybe just for us to see, because I think if people know that they have to attach their name to some of the stuff, it may cut down on possibly on what seems to be frivolous in some cases without just picking and choosing one off the list. But I mean, I'm sure we could all go through there and look at some things that, you know, may stick out as a little overzealous. So if we can make people.
I'll talk to Kevin and see what we can do.
Yeah. You know, just let people attach their name to something. If they think it's a big enough issue to bring up, you know, let them attach their name to it and go from there.
Okay.
That's my personal opinion. I think, obviously we have to spend a lot of time, I don't, and you don't, but who people, who maybe you do, but who investigates these things, puts in a lot of time to, to go through this and just could cut down on some of the stuff that might be frivolous.
Okay, will do.
Thank you.
There's a number of them also on that note that, are fairly old, that seem to be unresolved, junk, 2009, things like that,
They remain on the list in many cases because they may clean up the initial complaint, but within a matter of months,
Back.
They're right
it's
back there, yeah.
So they're back on the list, and we never get that opportunity to pull them from the list.
Right.
No, just to clarify, I was talking about the.
I know the ones you are talking
Yeah,
about.
okay.
The complaints for July and June. You're talking about the overall list of
Yeah.
those
Yeah,
unnamed.
those other
Right.
ones, right.
Greg's talking about the list of
Zoning
actual
complaints.
violations,
Yeah.
where a violation notice may or may not have been issued and what we've done and to follow up.
Okay.
So that's what happens, is they come off and they're back on almost
Right.
within weeks.
I asked that question several years ago.
Yeah, I bet. And Stuart, we issued a water advisory last time. Obviously, we've gotten some rain since
It's
then.
been-
It hasn't killed the
yeah, I
drought,
think-
but it's,
We've actually pulled it back. We did a public notice that ran, I think, in the media that let people know that we're no longer under water conservation
It's in the paper.
measures at this time.
Okay. On to other business. Greg, do you have anything tonight?
well, Mike, the concert series has been clicking along.
We had to cancel last Friday for the rain.
Yeah, last Friday was the weather thing. I'll be there Friday night, and I think you have a couple other ones.
24th and 31st.
31st is a Friday as well, yeah, okay.
Okay, so we can come down and see you on Friday.
You come down,
night.
see me on Friday.
Okay.
And so encourage that, and it is Battle Day weekend, so there should be a lot of action downtown. The firemen have their thing going on out downstairs, and, yeah, so,
Yeah, you're bringing Ray with you? Okay. Chris, do you have anything else?
that's all.
Actually,
Okay.
I just wanted to expand on the Battle Day. This is a huge event for Bennington, and the fire department works very hard getting things together. Starting on Friday, they've got barbecues and a Chinese auction. There's a car cruise from 6 to 9 on Friday, and ending Friday night with Las Vegas night. On Saturday, they've got the Battle Day Road Race, the Munster Games, the kids' games at the rec center, and on Sunday, of course, is the big parade, starts at 12:30. And I would encourage everyone to take a ride up the elevator at the monument. I know it's been a long time for me, and most people who live in here just see it every single day, but for the most part, forget that it's there. So I would encourage people just to visit our landmarks this weekend while they're out, and be safe.
Okay. Justin?
I have nothing, Sharon, other than to wish everyone a happy Battle Day.
Thank you. Jim?
Couple things. Stu, I talked to you earlier last week about concern that Roger Cross had expressed with respect to debris that was in the river near his house. Going to talk about that.
Yeah,
From Irene.
we've not moved on debris that was left along the riverbanks. In most cases, obviously, our attention was elsewhere, and the state now has taken a different position about the removal of that material. We do recognize that in a portion of that is visible from Silk Road, there's an island there that captured a lot of garbage, and I mean LP tanks and bits of insulation and things of that nature. We're going to try to see what we can do about getting out onto that island to try to clean some of that mess up. But if there is debris along the bank, and at this point it's not in danger of moving, we would have to bring the state down, the river folks, and have them take a look at each individual location to see whether or not that's something that we should pull because it's a threat to something downstream. So we'll have to take a look at each individual location. Silk Road is one because you can see quite a bit of debris from Silk Road as you run its length.
You also mentioned the last time that we talked about this, that there was concern about fish habitat.
Yes.
And the fact that some of that debris, the trees and things provide.
It does. It does, especially when they hang into the river's edge. They provide great pockets for protection of the fisheries. And in some cases, the state has gone about the state putting material into the river to reestablish fisheries habitat that have been decimated by the flooding. We seem to have quite a bit of debris available to us.
And just one other question in general, just to consider, a friend of mine, Linda Putney, and her husband have converted their apartment building to pellets, and I wonder if the town has looked into a considerable savings, if you're to believe.
We've looked at alternative energy sources at all of the municipal buildings. For the amount of fuel we use and the amount of heat we generate in the municipal offices, the police facility, the recreation, obviously, the rec center, the storage would become an issue for pellets. Where do you put the stuff?
Well, I've taken a look at it, and essentially it's approximately twice the size of the pre-existing oil tank that they had in there, and it's not
But you're talking about.
significantly.
Yeah, but you're talking about a two-family unit.
No, this was 5.
Well, 5. The energy usage is significantly higher for a lot of municipal buildings.
Yes.
But one of the things that we have talked about, and we haven't been able to move forward on it, obviously, a host of things happened last year that took our attention, and now with the rec center renovations going on, but we are looking into alternate pool heating systems as part of this project that may reduce the consumption of propane at the facility. A number of our facilities, the police station and the town offices in particular, may have an opportunity to tap the geothermal opportunity that the state tapped with the former Bennington Garage building, which works very well. They've been very successful there. So, I mean, that water table is directly below our facilities. You can, in fact, pull some covers in the basement of the police department and watch the water flow beneath the building. So there's some opportunities there that we just haven't had the time to really get into it and take a look at it. But we're always looking for ways to cut costs.
Thank you.
Okay. I would like to thank Nancy Lively, who's been our board secretary for a lot of years, for her service. She's resigning as she has other commitments that are taking too much of her time. And we'll welcome Linda Bermudez, who's gallantly taken on the daunting task of keeping us in order. So, Stuart, maybe if you could just send Nancy a little letter that says, thanks, we appreciate
Well,
you.
I've sent her a number of threatening letters.
Yeah, you probably
But
did.
other than that, I can't get her back even with that, so.
Okay.
Sharon, before you close out, could I, thanks, Stuart.
Just a minute. And then, again, Battle Day this weekend. It is a state convention, so there are going to be a lot more people in town. And Stuart, is the Bennington Battleship people, are they going to be doing anything at the town office?
Yes,
this year?
on Saturday at noontime, they'll be doing their memorial service at the Bennington Bell
Okay.
on the town office lawn.
Okay.
They come every year and do it there.
And will Joe be here for that?
I don't,
Joe
I
said he'd
think
be
Joe
back
is
for Battle Day.
supposed to be back in town, yes.
Okay. I'll try and get there if I...
They haven't looked for that kind of participation from the board. It's generally a private ceremony for the people, but it's a touching one to view.
It is, it's a very nice
Yeah.
ceremony. Okay. I think that's all I have. Just be safe this weekend and welcome all of our visitors. Michael, what did you have?
I want to thank Stuart for helping me have 2 nights with the Attorney General's candidates, and he's going to give me some more nights to use the facility here. And I've teamed up with the banner again this year like we did 2 years ago. We're going to try to get the gubernatorial debates down here and maybe the lieutenant governor, and then have the attorney general, whoever aspires off, have that down here. So I want to thank Stuart. He's taking some time to get some nights. So,
Okay.
thank you.
And we need an executive session?
Yes, we have two, well, one issue is a review, and we do have a BRLP application that
Okay.
we'd like you to take a look at.
Then I'll entertain a motion to go into executive
Make
session.
the motion to go to executive session.
Thank you. Thank you. All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you, everyone.
You can go home now.